Why did the president commute the sentence of David Gentile recently? Prosecutors said he defrauded $1.6 billion with thousands of victims.
This is another example that has been brought to the president's attention of a weaponization of justice from the previous administration, and therefore he signed this commutation.
Weaponization of justice is how Caroline Levitt says jury conviction of a fraudster named David Gentile. Gentile was found guilty by a jury of a massive $1.6 billion investment scheme that defrauded thousands of innocent victims, most of them small business owners, farmers, veterans, teachers, and nurses. In November, Donald Trump set David Gentile free just days into his 7-year prison sentence. Donald Trump also cleared him of the $15.5 million restitution he'd been ordered to pay the government. Now there's bombshell new reporting in the New York Times about the politicized efforts that were happening behind the scenes to normalize and conceal Donald Trump's unprecedented and seedy approach to clemency. New York Times is reporting this, quote, Trump's political appointees quashed an early-stage criminal investigation into the circumstances surrounding the clemency grant. That's according to 5 people with knowledge of the events. Quote, the investigation, which has not been previously reported, had begun examining whether improper payments were made to help facilitate the commutation awarded to David Gentile. Quote, by May, the investigation had come to an abrupt halt after the New York Times inquired about the matter with the White House and the U.S. Attorney's Office in the Eastern District of New York, where the career prosecutors pursuing the inquiry worked. I want to bring into our coverage New York Times reporter Nicole Hong. She's bylined on that incredible reporting. Liz Oyer is also back with us. Nicole, take us through what you and your colleagues are reporting.
So there are 2 main pieces of this that we found. One is that federal prosecutors in Brooklyn had opened a criminal investigation looking into the circumstances around this presidential commutation. And that in and of itself was pretty remarkable. Just the idea of a U.S. Attorney's Office, which is a part of the Justice Department, looking into whether anyone was illegally paid off as part of this commutation. But then the second piece of our story, which was even more remarkable, is we found out that after the White House and the Justice Department became aware of the existence of this investigation, the Justice Department reached out to the Eastern District of New York and essentially told them to shut down the investigation.
Was it your understanding that the investigation included a line of inquiry into Trump's participation or possible being a beneficiary of the financial elements of this?
We didn't have any indication that Trump was a target of the investigation. No.
What was the sensitive tripwire then that made Maine DOJ stop career prosecutors from investigating?
There's a few elements to that. So one is that federal prosecutors were looking into this Catholic priest, Frank Mann, who was friendly with President Trump. Mann has attended events at the White House. He delivered the closing benediction at the inauguration last year. So that was certainly one of the sensitivities. But we also had heard through our reporting that Justice Department officials were concerned about the optics of investigating a religious figure like Father Mann, and also that there was a sense that they believed the federal prosecutors in Brooklyn may have opened this investigation just because they were upset about the commutation, even though we show through reporting in our story that there was real evidence that this investigation was gathering.
So here's some of the evidence that the investigation yielded before it was shut down from the story. Quote, among the evidence they gathered was information about jailhouse communications, in which Mr. Gentile discussed making payments of $2.5 million or more to people or companies to help facilitate his clemency, according to 2 people with knowledge of the investigation who were not authorized to discuss it. Did the investigation go on long enough to make clear who got that $2.5 $2.5 million from Mr. Gentile. Did it all go to Mann, or is it not known at this point who got the $2.5 million?
It's not known to us. We are still reporting, but we do know that Gentile has told people that he had facilitated some kind of payment to Mann. We don't know how much, but that is one of the things we're still reporting out.
So this is, for viewers of my program, this is how Mann is described in your reporting. Quote, one of the people who came under scrutiny by the investigators was the Reverend Frank Mann, a retired Catholic priest from Queens who's friends with Trump. In an email sent to the New York Times, Father Mann denied having anything to do with the clemency, but people with knowledge of the prison communications say that the priest corresponded with Gentile about lobbying the president on his behalf. Nicole, what do you know about the victims of the fraud for which Trump pardoned Mr. Gentile?
So this was a huge fraud scheme. Over $1 billion as part of the fraud scheme. There were thousands of victims, and the prosecutors have characterized them as, small business owners, veterans. At sentencing, some of them talked about losing their entire retirement savings to this scheme. So it was a very serious fraud scheme, and it is one of the reasons why this commutation was so controversial at the time, because it didn't fit the traditional criteria of a case that would have been considered for a commutation.
Liz Warrior, let me bring you in on this. The victims of Mr. Gentile, who was pardoned by Donald Trump, describe it like this, quote, it felt like another Bernie Madoff deal. I'm going to take your money, I'm going to pay out over here, and then you're going to run out of money. The people who lost everything didn't get the treatment that Mr. Gentile got from Donald Trump. What is your sense from what you see and from this reporting of this sort of current state of the pardon process?
Well, this is great reporting because this case has been a big question mark for a lot of people. There is no scenario under which this person would get a commutation according to the Justice Department's rules and standards for recommending commutations. There is no scenario in which he received this commutation based on merit. He's somebody who cheated people out of over $1 billion and got rich doing it, showed no remorse for his conduct, and served almost none of his prison sentence. So this is not a commutation that is based on merit. So everyone knew that there had to be something else going on, and it seems like the New York Times, thanks to Nicole, has uncovered what happened here, which is that there was a quid pro quo corrupt arrangement in place to get this pardon, and we've seen that time and time again under Donald Trump. I'm keeping a running tally. It's over on my Substack for anyone who's interested, of how much debt owed to crime victims and taxpayers has been forgiven by Donald Trump's pardons and commutations, and it is over $1.5 billion to date. Donald Trump is wiping out the obligation of wealthy people who got richer through fraud and other crimes to pay back their victims using the clemency power. That is a total distortion of the intention of the founders of the Constitution who gave the president the pardon power. It is harming and re-traumatizing victims of crime. It is depriving taxpayers of money that is owed to us, that has been stolen from our government, and it is corrupting the justice system at a very fundamental level by creating two tiers of justice, depending on whether you know somebody like a Father Mann who's able to access Donald Trump directly, and you're able to pony up a couple million of dollars to get a commutation or a pardon.
I mean, Liz, the reporting leaves you with the distinct impression that at least some investigators, career investigators in this office, agree with you. I mean, what happens to them?
Yeah, I think that it's been very distressing to career prosecutors to see what Donald Trump has done with the pardon power to undercut meritorious prosecutions that in some cases have been ongoing at the time the clemency has been granted. It is incredibly unusual for clemency to be granted to somebody who has served almost none of their sentence, which is what happened in this case. And there are a lot of prosecutors who worked very hard on this case to get justice for these victims, to give these people an opportunity to be repaid paid who are rightly very upset about this clemency. There are victims who are very upset about this clemency, and it's not the only one. There are others who have served none of their sentence, who've defrauded victims. There's one that comes to mind, Trevor Milton, who stole over $600 million from victims of his crime, and the pardon came in and wiped it all out in a second, and now these people are being re-traumatized who were victimized in the first place by then not being able to collect the restitution that is owed to them. So it's demoralizing to a whole lot of different stakeholders in the criminal justice system, and I don't want to forget about the people who are actually deserving of this type of relief, who are being overlooked in favor of these wealthy and well-connected friends of the president who are not deserving of clemency.